Welcome to the Centaur Financial Services podcast. Today we kick off with our 2025 retirement series with episode 1, The Retirement Transition, Avoiding Financial Pitfalls. Retirement is a significant milestone and transitioning from accumulation to drawdown can be challenging. Our experts are here to help you avoid common mistakes and make the most of your golden years. Joining us today is Hugh Robertson, Nick Georgopoulos and Anthony Mirandilla. They'll explore the common challenges and provide actionable advice for a smooth retirement transition. If you find this episode helpful, please share it and reach out to us for more resources.
Welcome to 2025. It's crazy to think that we're already 1 month into the new year. So Nick and Anthony and I, we've got our heads together and we want to talk about some stuff that's going to be really important to you outside of the non-controllables. We've got Trump as president now. We've got the Australian share market at an all-time high. That's 8,493 points. We've got the S&P 500, the US share market at 6,071 points. We've got Bitcoin going through the roof. We might have interest rates going down. But all of these are kind of non-controllables and outside of what we can do on a daily basis to give you guys a better retirement. So this is part of a retirement series that we've started based off the feedback that we've gotten from the clients. And today's topic is going to be how to avoid financial pitfalls, in particularly with the retirement transition. We've got 8 key talking points here that we will go through. And anyone that knows me knows that it's not going to be short. So I've got these two to kind of hurry me up. So let's just kick straight into it. Nick, welcome. Anthony, welcome.
Thank you, mate.
So let's start with, go over here, relying too heavily on cash.
Yeah, so can be one of the dangers as you enter retirement is thinking that we just sell down the whole portfolio that you had in your superannuation or your other assets outside of superannuation, stockpile a cash pile, and then you just live off that for the rest of your life. And it's not a horrible thought right now. We've got interest rates that you can get in the bank right now being between that 4 to 5%. So a decent income living could be had off cash in the bank. But now as we start to see the regime of potential rate cuts coming through, we do need to consider the role that inflation plays of just holding cash and the risk that actually poses to retirees. There is the need to think, yes, we do have to have that liquidity in a portfolio, which cash as an asset does play for us. But there is also the need for that longer term growth as well as assets that are going to generate a different type of income outside of that cash.
Mm-hmm. So you've got now clients worried about volatility in the market, and they're thinking that the market's at an all-time high.
Yes.
So they want to maybe even flee to cash.
It's a good thought. I would say, we're always going to have the noise. We're always going to have the volatility. It doesn't matter what part of the market cycle we're in. The important note is to never try to time that.
Mm-hmm.
As long as we've got our bucket set up, our diversification within that portfolio, you really just let that mechanism work for you. So having that cash bucket available to know, okay, I've got a sufficient amount of income ready in cash that I can draw upon. If markets do suddenly decline, do I have enough to get me through a couple of years reprieve without having to sell down shares?
I think one of the comments that we sort of felt when we started 2024 was that, it was going to be a Trump versus Biden US election. Interest rates were going to go down drastically. We were going to have this hard landing, this really bad recession.
Yes.
So you wouldn't have blamed a client for putting money out and going into and saying, well, we need to be in cash because it's going to be a terrible market. And that all proved wrong.
Yes.
The market had a cracking year and everyone that stayed invested did really well. So I think part of those narratives and part of those probably mindsets come around to timing. And that's just something that doesn't exist. Diversification still wins the day more often than not.
I think it's fair to say there too, like generally speaking, the market's always going to have volatility. So as long as you've got your structures set up and you're sort of prepared for that volatility in markets, riding it out and staying rational and leaving the emotion aside just can help out with your overall retirement planning needs.
Sometimes the worst the enemy of every investor is the mirror.
Yes, mate.
Yeah. So, okay, so you're talking about strategy. So there's someone in accumulation looking to go into retirement phase.
Yep.
Talk about tax strategies to us.
Yeah, so like coming into retirement, importantly, there's a few things you've got to sort of address. I was having a conversation this morning just about that, and making the most of that last year of income that you're going to work in that capacity of your career, and making the most of super contributions. There's carried forward contributions you can utilize, there's catch up contributions, and all of this is just making sure you maximize those things that are available to you and preparedness for your retirement. But then going into retirement, it's how do you store or where do you have your retirement capital? And the utilisation of superannuation, but importantly, income streams and what they can provide on a tax viewpoint is essential, because the main benefit of having superannuation, especially in retirement phase, is utilising the tax benefits that come with those types of structures. So having an income stream that can provide you a really good investment, but importantly, provide you a really good after-tax investment strategy, because you don't have tax in those types of arrangements as long as you meet certain requirements. So yeah, there's definitely a few things you need to be looking at in those tax planning stages and strategies. The other one is making the most of your long service leave. A lot of people come to us and go, what should I do? Do I take it now? Do I spread it out and just get it, paid out over the next 6 months? I've got 12 months owing. Do I do it at half pay? It's just having a chat with your advisor to really work through what's the best approach for you.
And I think that's where we can always, when we talk about the strategies that we're doing for clients, that's always where we get a few quick wins with deductible strategies. And I suppose the other one there that really we look at more and more now is reducing death tax.
Yes.
So we don't have a death tax in Australia that everyone tells us, but there is one with superannuation. So again, always talk with us around that. From my perspective, I think also as people are going into the drawdown phase, there's that transition from being a growth-oriented investor into a more balanced investor, and really trying to understand how we map out the different cash flows to meet your liquidity needs for retirement is one of the most important sort of parts of the planning process that we're doing. Often people think if they're five years from retirement, they need to be a balanced investor already. And then they kind of rob themselves of growth assets doing what they do. So you can still be a growth investor while you're in the lead up to retirement, but just making sure you're really clever with where your super contribution's going, both from your employer and the stuff that you make. Because by that stage, usually your income's at the highest it's ever been. The kids, hopefully, have left home. Most likely, you're debt-free. So we're starting to see that there's some real benefit in how you structure that, so you're getting more bang for buck. And then when we do retire, making sure that we've got that, what we call that GFC-proof portfolio. So we've mapped out 1 to 3 years worth of cash, a few years worth of fixed income. So even if something comes, because let's be honest, the market's at record highs. Everyone, if it's too good to be true, it is.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to be more diligent, and that's, I suppose, our message for our clients as well, as with what we've had the last few years. COVID, a lot of people forget that in 2022 was a negative year. Is we've got to be really careful with this stuff. We've got a pretty volatile political environment nowadays. There's a lot of movement with the AI sort of, thematic. So I think us really making sure that our clients understand that drawdown phase and how to plan for that in the lead up to retirement, so that when you do retire, you're not there worried. We don't want year one of you retire that the market goes down and you think you have to go back to work, because that's not the dream retirement. Let's go on to misjudging spending patterns. So talk to us about misjudging spending patterns.
So I suppose one of the main misconceptions for a lot of people anyway, as they enter retirement, is that they will spend less than they would in their working life. But from our experience, it tends to be the other way around. You're spending more. And so you should. You've worked all of your life. It's now time to enjoy some of what you've built. And that might come in the form of increased spending. So a lot of the time, it's your spending patterns will follow through into retirement. We don't change our feathers, so to speak. If we're frugal, we'll continue to be frugal. If we're lavish spenders, we'll continue that way. But it's about pinpointing some of those additional costs that we'll see as you enter that retirement lifestyle. That might be what I've seen just this week is a lot of spending on the grandkids and spoiling them that way. It's cruises, it's the overseas travel. It's a lot of those items on the bucket list that you somewhat can forget to plan for, but in your most active years of retirement is where that expense is going to fall.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about planning ahead for that. And then on the other side of that, understand what assets are needed to support that larger expenditure or that continued expenditure. So liquidity comes into there. Do we have enough liquid assets to facilitate that? Because some of these spending items won't be saving up $100 a week to pay for it at the end of the year. It's usually going to be utilised from capital we already have to be paying for that holiday as a lump sum, as an example. So a bit more consideration towards that. Obviously, some ways we can plan it is understanding, well, what are the known expenses now? Our bills, our rates, our medical costs, they'll most likely continue into retirement, so we can almost put a level of expenditure around that. But then that discretionary side of expenditure is something that I really encourage to prepare for before you get to those retirement years, so you really have a good idea of what you're doing.
I think what we always talk about is that U-shaped spending pattern in retirement that, if we be a little bit crude and just say there's going to be a 30-year retirement time frame and we break it off into sort of three lots of 10. The first 10 is the active 10. That's where we will expect that we're going to spend a little bit more money. Then the next 10, because we're going to be more active, we're going to travel, we're going to do all those things that are lumpy expenses. Might buy a caravan, might get a new car. We get to that next 10, that middle 10, where we don't really have the desire to travel anymore. We don't have the desire to, go overseas, travel around Australia. So those expenses tend to dry up a little bit. And it more is just the day-to-day living. And then that last 10, the one that we've probably seen more and more of is the aged care costs and medical costs. But I think from that perspective, you've always got to sit down with your advisor to talk about your spending patterns, because the one thing we don't want clients to have is regret. You don't want to get to a point where now you can't travel anymore or you can't do the things you want to do that financially we could have proven that you could have done. And so you have those great experiences, those great memories.
I had an interesting conversation this morning just on expenditure between a couple. So we always like to understand what's the right amount of expenses, but I think as a couple or as clients, you also need to have that conversation between yourselves, just so you're both on the same page. It was quite interesting. One had this expectation, but the other was up here, and we really had to come to that happy medium. So having that chat in preparedness for your retirement as well between yourselves to really understand what that should look like for you both.
So if we're talking about these partners, how do we then handle market volatility when one is usually more of a risk taker? So people looking at downturns in the markets, what can happen to portfolios? How do you handle those conversations? What do people need to look at?
Yeah, I think unfortunately, like we experienced through the pandemic and then in 2022, people getting ready for their retirements had to make some pretty hard decisions around investment strategy, spending, and a lot of those things. But I think it does really boil down to the right conversations with your advisor around what's the most appropriate investment strategy for the long term, not necessarily the next 2 years, but importantly, what we need to do to ensure our money's still there when we need it most down the track in our twilight years of retirement. So having that real conversation around somewhat of the bucket approach, and I know a lot of our clients have heard that term here before, and where we have the growth bucket, which is literally for that purpose, to grow your retirement capital for the future. We've got our fixed expenses and our discretionary bucket as well. And those are purely for the purpose of making sure we're living for the now, but also more importantly, that you're not having to make difficult decisions in the event the markets do fall. Back to the pandemic, the government made changes in terms of the minimum drawdowns for pensioners in their retirements. And that was mainly because they were having to make tough decisions around how much of the shares or investments they were selling to get their income requirements they needed. So going through a conversation with your advisor around ensuring the investment strategy sort of allows for certain events like this to happen, and you then not having to make tough decisions to get through to make sure you're living how you want to live. So yeah, mate.
Well, it's interesting now. So we have market volatility right now, but the market's going up. I'm not hearing, the news at night tell me, I'm not hearing the Koshis of the world tell me, the market's gone up 5%, the market's gone up 3%. But when the market goes down, that's all just great. They're trying to appeal to our fear factor, and trying to really get us responding negatively, and usually the impact is then selling. So I think from that behavioral investing side as well, that last topic, the spending patterns, the market volatility, that really reinforces the point of you've got to be talking with us. You've got to the advisors to say, hey, what's actually going on? NVIDIA, this week, NVIDIA's just gone down a lot because some Chinese AI company, is going to come through, and it's taken them a year and 5.6 million to develop, the new ChatGPT. But a lot of that's just noise. And I think in this world, in our own careers or our own fields where we've got expertise, we know there's a lot of noise. That kind of always reinforces to me the importance of always revisiting your financial plan and your goals and understanding what you want to achieve. We don't care what Koshi says. We don't care what, your friends are living. We care what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve. And when you make a bespoke plan and revisit it, think about, last year, or, when the market was going to have a bad year, you've got to really make sure you're having that conversation with the advisor. Well, what are our goals? Can we ride the volatility if it does go down? And, there's changes. There's going to be settling changes. There's superannuation changes. There's tax changes. There's, going to be, I'm sure there's aged care changes that have just come through. So all these things are going to change. So the plan that you set 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, the data's different now. So the thing we've got to keep sort of every time we're meeting and doing our reviews with our clients is making sure that we're reviewing what your goals are and then applying what the economic landscape, what the legislative landscape environment is giving us at this point in time. Probably one of the big things is adult children growing up, and the inheritance, this intergenerational wealth. Do we help our kids now versus do we help later? The beauty of, the financial advisor is we can model all that stuff out for clients and really start to collaborate with them on what are both the expected events and the unexpected events, and sort of go, okay, well, if this happens, these are our contingencies, these are our levers that we can pull in place. So I think though, really understanding your spending patterns, talking to us about market volatility and always reviewing your own financial plan, I think that's really important for our clients to always just understand and be talking to us. Something that we can't forget about is emotional transition. So this is about going into retirement. So what are the big things clients need to be aware of there?
Yeah, I suppose it's even further beyond the emotion. So you put the finances aside and think, as you enter retirement, setting goals, setting objectives, it needs to almost transfer across to that social, that emotional, that mental, and that physical lifestyle that you're going to have in retirement. We see time and time again when our clients give up on their health, they give up on their mind, it starts to give up on them. It really reduces the longevity of their lifestyle in retirement. So some of the considerations that you should be making is you've moved from a life of structure, day to day, the 9 to 5, if that was the jam at the time, to almost the unknown, and you don't have that structure in place, and that can have a pretty crucial impact on a lot of people's lives. So putting the right building blocks in place to ensure, what am I doing from a physical health perspective to ensure, am I going for walks, am I joining a walking group? That social aspect is so important. We find that so many people can fall into this recluse lifestyle in retirement, where they used to be surrounded by their co-workers so often. So understanding who will you be living with, where you will be living, is there an opportunity for you to enhance that social factor, whether it's different groups, different speaking classes, those sorts of things that are available to a lot of retirees should be planned into the whole retirement plan side of things. And then the emotional or the mental factor as well, making sure that we're still using our brain, still challenging yourselves in that lifestyle as well to keep up
Well, a lot of times our social connections are in the workplace. You know, your personality and sort of your being to some extent, a reflection of you is your work. So it's really about what we kind of talk about is don't retire to escape work. Like run into retirement with plans and goals of activities, holidays, passion projects, and things like that you can be excited about. And when you retire, just because you have all the free time now, don't start retirement like that. You know, it's like when your kids start school, you say start by, you know, being active, go make friends, do all this. And I think retirement's that, you know, that again, that new bit of excitement, that, you know, that third life almost that you live in, where you've really got to make sure how you started might very well determine, you know, your happiness there. And I think that's also the biggest element of research that we're seeing come through from from industry is around how not just about your wealth in retirement, but, you know, we kind of think about your health, your wealth, and your relationships. And that interconnectedness.
I think it takes time to get used to that retirement lifestyle. You don't retire one day and you've mastered it, you're doing the best you can, right? It takes practice to live the ideal retirement lifestyle. I think from some studies in the industry, it says it takes up to 5 years for you to be truly comfortable about retirement. And that's not only from the do I have enough internal questions that you have, but the fulfillment piece as well.
And we know, even as you're saying this, I know there's clients who have retired who are thinking that they still need to go back to work.
Absolutely.
Even though financially they're worried about the money and they're worried about this. So it said to me, we've got to do a better job educating our clients and showcasing that you will be okay. Even if there is the dip, you won't have to go back to work. Okay, we're getting the wrap-up sign here. So from our perspective, I think if we quickly sort of just talk about our takeaways, what's your big takeaways, Anthony?
Yeah, I think from the points I've made there, I think just having that conversation with your advisor around your investment strategy, ensuring that you've gone through the right process in preparing for retirement, got your investment strategies in place overall. I think just one note on that. Last year of work, so many things go, as I've experienced with some of my clients, go through their head around different scenarios, and just probably leaning on us a lot through that process just can help. Make the most of your advice team, have a chat about everything that's going on in your world, and ensure you've got those things in place ready for your retirement.
Me, I suppose I would go with look beyond the finances. So think about that social, physical, and mental aspects of your retirement lifestyle. Of course, the financial side is very important because that's the tool we're using to support the other side, but we can't forget that side.
Yes. And I think from my perspective, and the older I've gotten and the more I've been around, 20 years now into the industry, it's about having a plan and sticking to the plan. Mm-hmm. And we really need to be able to trust the process and block out the noise. So if you've built your own financial plan, it's yours. When things change, it will change. It's not a straight line, but really trusting that process because time does heal all wounds. Mm-hmm. Markets do recover. Legislation does change. And so I think if clients can have the plan and trust the plan, then they're always going to have peace of mind. And most importantly to us, they'll pass the sleep at night test, knowing that their money's in good hands. They're living a great lifestyle. And I think that's the greatest intergenerational asset you can give your kids is showing them that you live an abundant life. Yes. I think that is always something that's very, very great to achieve as well. Okay, that is all from us. If ever there's any questions, please shoot them through to the team. We're always here for you guys. We hope 2025 is a great year for you. There's going to be volatility. We know there's an election on this year in Australia. So just call us, when you need us. And if there's any other questions you want us to answer and you like this format, please shoot them through. All right. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
See you later.
The information provided on and made available through this video and podcast does not constitute as financial product advice. The information is of a general nature only and does not take into account your individual objectives, financial situation or needs. It should not be used, relied upon, or treated as a substitute for specific professional advice. We recommend that you obtain your own independent professional advice before making any decision in relation to your particular requirements or circumstances.